My husband served me divorce papers on my birthday, so I invited him to a dinner that ended his entire plan. I had been waiting at the small round table near the window. A candle flickered and a silver plate held a single rose. I had told him I loved surprises. I wore the blue dress he liked. I had imagined him coming with a small box, maybe a ring, maybe a silly card. The restaurant hummed with quiet voices. The waiter left a napkin folded like a swan. I checked my watch. A courier came, hands steady, and he handed me a plain envelope. My fingers shook. Inside were papers stamped in black. Divorce. My name printed at the top. A small typed note slid out. You'll thank me later. I showed it to the waiter. He looked shocked. I felt the room tilt. My heart broke, then hardened. I pressed the paper against the table as if it burned. I recorded the moment on my phone. Hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. I sat very still while the candle smoke rose. The chair across from me stayed empty. My wine glass trembled in my hand like I had a small animal inside. My phone buzzed. His name showed and a short text blinked. Don't make a scene. I read it twice. My throat closed. I wanted to cry but my eyes were dry. The words made a hot ball of anger grow inside me. I had baked the cake this morning. I had put candles on it and practiced the silly song he liked. I had planned a quiet wish. Now the paper in my lap stole my breath. I folded the envelope carefully and slid it into my purse. I could have left then. I could have called my sister. Instead I sat, feeling my hands shake into careful calm. I promised myself this would not be how my story ended. I would not be small. I would not be forgotten. The next morning my phone blew up with notifications. Pictures of him and a lawyer showed on every feed. They smiled in a lobby, arms close. A caption said, "New beginnings." I stared at my coffee until it went cold. He had chosen my birthday to make a show. He had timed his betrayal like a firework meant to burn me. People I had known for years liked and shared the photos. Some sent messages that hurt like salt. My daughter texted, "I saw." My hands found the note I had carried in my purse all night. I read the line again, the cruel promise, "You'll thank me later." I put the phone down and walked to the window where the street looked like a place. I had never felt small and seen. I breathed in, slow and hard. I would let this be a spark, not a funeral pyre. I would answer with truth. I remembered nights with the lamp still on and his papers splayed like a city on the kitchen table. I had typed his briefs and made neat tabs for cases. I had balanced his coffee cup with my elbow while he read long lines about contracts. I had packed sandwiches for him on long work days and listened when he worried about clients. He had grown taller in the room like a plant fed praise. I had chosen his first suit and ironed it when work kept him late. I had stood behind him at every city hall meeting and smiled while he spoke. I had been the engine that kept the firm running. We had shared jokes and plans. He used my maiden name for a firm paper and we laughed. I thought we were partners. The paper at dinner said I was wrong. Those memories turned into a map of how he had used me, piece by piece. My lawyer sat me down the next day in a small office that smelled of books. She spread papers and pointed. The divorce packet showed lines that moved our house, our savings, and my shares into his name. Clauses let him keep the company and hide money. She said he planned for months. Each clause felt like a cold hand closing around my life. I felt faint but kept calm. I asked and she answered slowly. She told me about a trust he opened and transfers to accounts I never saw. I thought of nights I gave him my trust and care. The restaurant paper proved his plan was not sudden. He had mapped it like a cold map. I left with a new truth. I was in a fight that would not be quiet. My hands tightened on the folder. I told myself I would learn every number and turn every hidden page into light. I checked my email late that night, hoping for something normal. Instead, I opened a message that was not for me. It was meant for her, the young lawyer from the photos. The subject line read, "After she signs." Inside, he wrote, "Once she signs, I'm all yours, babe." The words felt like sharp glass. My hands went cold. I read it again, slower, letting each word cut. He had sent it to our shared inbox by mistake. Or maybe he felt so safe he didn't care. I stared at the glowing screen and felt something heavy inside me sink and then change. The sadness that had covered me since dinner began to burn away. I printed the email and placed it in a folder. I whispered to myself, "Thank you for the next piece." I shut the laptop, wiped my eyes, and sat straighter. Rage was not wild. It was clear. It was calm. It was steady. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again. She showed me how he had moved our savings into offshore accounts. The papers listed me as financially dependent, like I was a child he carried instead of a wife who built a life with him. I felt heat rise in my face. He had made me small on purpose. He wanted the court to see me as someone who needed him. I asked questions and wrote notes. Every answer made the truth sharper. He planned to leave me with almost nothing. I wasn't angry now. I was awake. I took the papers and read them 3 times at home. I saw his signatures and his bold strokes. He was not only ending our marriage. He wanted control even after the end. I closed the file and said aloud, "No more." I decided then that I would turn every trick he used into a step against him. My therapist sat across from me, wearing soft colors that made her room feel safe. She listened as I told her everything, the dinner, the photos, the email, the accounts. When I stopped talking, she leaned forward. "Joyce, people like him don't only want freedom. They want control," she said. The words felt like a key in a locked door. She told me that some people build their power by making others feel small. I nodded. I had lived inside that shrinking space for years without knowing. Something inside me shifted. The crying that had flooded me earlier that week was gone. I felt my breath settle. My therapist watched my face and said, "You are not broken. You are preparing." I left her office with a small pad in my hand. I wrote only one sentence at the top, "Start planning." The street outside looked brighter, as if the world wanted me to move forward. I began gathering everything quietly. I opened old folders, checked files, and saved screenshots. I printed bank statements and compared dates. I copied emails and moved them to a secure drive. I even photographed drawers in his home office where he hid things he thought I would never touch. Each new detail made the picture clearer. This was not a sudden betrayal. It was built slowly, like a trap. I kept my notes in a plain notebook with a flower cover so no one would guess. I wrote down dates, names, and numbers. I even wrote his moods from memory and how he acted around the lawyer. Every night I read what I had collected. Instead of tears, I felt strength. I was no longer walking blind. I was preparing my own map. Every small piece of truth became a stone I could step on. I whispered to myself, "Keep going, Joyce. Keep going." One afternoon, a coworker from my old job called and asked to meet at a small cafe. She sat down, looked around, and whispered, "Joyce, I need to tell you something." She told me his affair had started 2 years ago, not months. She said he used company money to take the young lawyer on trips, flights, hotels, dinners, all written off as work training. I felt my stomach twist, but I kept listening. She slid a small folder across the table. Inside were dates, travel records, and receipts. It was all there, every lie, every stolen dollar. She had saved them because she didn't trust him, either. I thanked her and held the folder close. When I got home, I added it to my growing pile. Fraud was a strong word, but now it felt right. I sat at my table, hands steady. This was not just heartbreak. This was evidence. And evidence was power. I sat at my kitchen table and looked again at the papers from the cafe. My coworker had shown me something huge. He had used company money for trips with the young lawyer. That meant fraud. As I read more, I remembered something he told me years ago. He had registered part of his firm under my maiden name to save on taxes. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now I saw the truth. It tied me to the business in a legal way. I called my old accountant friend and asked her to check. Later she called back and said, "Joyce, you legally own 40%. I sat back in my chair, stunned. All the years I helped him, all the nights I worked behind the scenes, now they became a tool he never expected me to use. I touched the folder and felt a spark inside my chest. For once, the law was on my side. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again. She read the new papers slowly, tapping her pen on the table. "Joyce, if you push this, you could destroy his career," she said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "And it might drag your name into the mess too." I looked at her hands, steady and calm. I thought of my birthday dinner, the empty chair, the note telling me I would thank him later. I thought of the email to the young lawyer and the photos online. Then I looked my lawyer in the eyes. "Good," I said, and my voice did not shake. She leaned back, surprised, but then nodded. "Then we move forward," she said. She started drawing lines on a legal pad, showing me the best angles and strongest paths. I listened closely. Every word felt like a tool being placed in my hands. I was not scared anymore. I was ready. I decided to trick him. I told my lawyer I wanted to pretend to surrender. She smiled a little and said it could work. So I called him and used the calmest voice I could find. I said I was tired and just wanted peace. We met at a small office, and I signed the first set of papers, only the early drafts, nothing final. He smirked the whole time, like a man already counting his winnings. He said, "This is for the best, Joyce." I nodded and kept my face soft. Inside, I was cold as stone. When we finished, he left the building with a light step, almost skipping. He believed he had beaten me. He believed I was weak. I watched him walk away and felt no sadness. His confidence was my cover. His pride was my shield. If he trusted that I had given up, then he would never see what was coming next. I called his old accountant that same night. He answered with a tired voice, and when I said my name, he hesitated. I told him I knew about the offshore accounts. I told him I didn't want to destroy him if he helped me. I promised him confidentiality and safety. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Joyce." I never liked what he was doing. He agreed to meet. We sat in a quiet booth at a diner far from town. He showed me account numbers, transfers, secret folders, and emails. He explained how the money moved and where it landed. There were files with dates that matched his trips with the young lawyer. The accountant said, "If the court sees this, he's finished." I nodded and saved everything to my secure drive. When I left the diner, the night air felt cool and sharp. I finally had the missing piece of the puzzle. I knew I had to rebuild my image before the fight began. So I started attending charity events again, the ones I stopped going to years ago because he said they were a waste of time. I wore soft colors and smiled at people I once helped. I answered questions with calm grace. Reporters began to notice me again, the quiet wife who had been wronged. They wrote small stories about my strength. I pretended not to care, but inside I knew it was working. The more people saw me, the more they watched him. I made no loud moves. I simply appeared in the right places at the right times. I let sympathy grow like a soft wind. And while everyone thought I was healing, I was actually setting a stage. Soon, there would be eyes on everything he did. Soon, the truth would shine in a way no one could ignore. One evening, while scrolling online, I froze. The young lawyer had posted a photo of herself wearing a necklace. Not just any necklace, my wedding necklace. The one he gave me on our 10th anniversary. She posed with it in a mirror, smiling like she had won something. She had no idea what she had revealed. The internet noticed fast. Comments asked why she had a married woman's jewelry. People began digging. Photos, dates, and tags started lining up. Suddenly the sweet image of their new beginning cracked. Sympathy poured in for me. My inbox filled with messages from women saying they believed me now. Reporters reached out again. I stayed quiet. I let the world talk. Every hour, more people sided with me. The young lawyer tried to delete the photo, but it was too late. I saved copies and added them to my folder. Her small mistake became a huge gift. I waited 2 days, then wrote him a simple email. I'd like one civil dinner before everything ends. No lawyers. Just closure. I knew he would accept. He always liked feeling in control. He replied within minutes, saying he was glad I was finally being reasonable. I almost laughed. I chose the same restaurant where he once proposed. I picked a table near the center so everyone could see him when the show began. I made sure the date was just before his firm's biggest client meeting. He arrived wearing his best suit, pretending concern. "Joyce, I'm happy we can talk," he said. I smiled gently and pulled out his chair. Inside, my heart was steady. Outside, I looked soft and calm. He believed he was winning. That was exactly why he would never see the hit coming. For more shocking twists like this, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. Before the dinner, I met with my lawyer and the accountant. We set a timer on an email release that would go out during the meal. Documents, transfers, travel receipts, fraud proof, everything. We made copies and backups, each one locked with a code. My lawyer said, "Once this goes out, he can't hide anything." I nodded. I felt no fear, only focus. I dressed slowly that evening, choosing the dark dress he always ignored. I curled my hair and wore simple earrings. I checked the tiny recorder hidden in my bracelet. I packed all the files into a sleek folder and placed it in my purse. Before leaving, I touched the kitchen counter and whispered, "It's time." The night air felt cool against my skin as I walked to my car. Every step felt steady. I wasn't going to dinner for closure. I was going for justice. And justice was ready. That morning, before the dinner, I updated my will. It felt strange signing papers about my own life, but I needed to be safe. I named my sister as executor. I didn't know how he might react once everything came out. I wasn't afraid of him, but I believed in being prepared. My lawyer looked at me and said softly, "This is the smart move." I nodded. I went home and took a long shower. I practiced what I would say at dinner. I kept my words short, simple, and sharp. My lawyer called it controlled demolition. I called it dessert. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone different, older, yes, but stronger. The fear that once sat on my shoulders was gone. I packed my purse with the bracelet, my phone, and the folder. I whispered, "He took my birthday. I will take his future." Then I left the house. All afternoon, I rehearsed everything again. I walked around my living room, speaking my lines in a calm voice. I imagined his face when the emails hit. I imagined the clients calling. I imagined his hands shaking. I didn't want anger to control me. I wanted clarity. When evening came, I lit a candle and sat for a moment, letting my breath settle. I checked the timed email system twice and tested the bracelet mic once more. Everything worked. I put on a soft coat and grabbed my purse. As I locked the door, the world felt strangely quiet, as if it knew the storm coming. Driving to the restaurant, I felt steady, almost peaceful. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I had cried enough. Now it was time to act. This was the last calm moment before the fall. And I was ready to watch everything he built crumble. I chose the same restaurant where he once proposed, the place where he swore we would share everything forever. I arrived early and let the soft lights fall across the table. When he walked in, he wore the same fake warm smile he used in court. He leaned in as if he cared. "Joyce, you look lovely," he said. I smiled back, keeping my voice smooth. "Happy anniversary to the man who taught me how to lose everything and gain clarity." His eyes twitched, but he sat anyway. The waiter poured water. The room hummed with quiet talk. I folded my napkin slowly, giving him time to think I was there to forgive him. Inside, I watched him the way a hunter watched a careless deer. He relaxed, thinking he was safe. He had no idea that the countdown had already begun. The email timer was ticking. His fall was already in motion. He picked up the menu, acting gentle and calm. "Joyce, I hope we can move on," he said. I tilted my head and asked sweetly, "Are you happy with her?" His smile widened. He bragged about their condo, their trips, their future plans. Every word he spoke dripped with pride. I nodded and encouraged him to talk more. He bragged about the money he moved, the way he managed everything, while I stayed simple. He didn't know my bracelet held a tiny mic recording every word. He didn't notice I kept turning my wrist just a little so it caught his voice better. He went on and on, so sure of himself. I asked about his firm, his clients, even his accounts. He answered without thinking. Pride made him careless. I watched his face glow with arrogance. The more he talked, the clearer his downfall became. When the waiter brought our drinks, I lifted my glass and said softly, "To freedom and new beginnings." He clinked his glass against mine, smiling like a king. Right then, his phone buzzed. He glanced down, expecting something sweet. Instead, his smile died. His eyes widened. Another buzz. Then another. He unlocked the screen with shaking hands. His breath caught. I sipped my drink and watched his face pale. What is this?" he whispered. I didn't answer. His phone kept lighting up, emails sent to every major client of his firm. Proof of his fraud. Proof of the affair. Proof of the offshore transfers. His own signature everywhere. He stared at me like I was a stranger. In that moment, he understood he had walked into a trap. And he had set every piece of it himself. He leaned forward, gripping the table as if it could save him. "Joyce, what did you do?" he whispered. I didn't hide my smile. "The first blow," I said softly. His phone buzzed again. His biggest client sent a message, "We will be contacting the board immediately." Another said, "Your contract is suspended." He swallowed hard. I took another slow sip of wine. The waiter glanced at us nervously. My husband's breathing grew fast. "This is illegal," he said. "No," I replied. "Everything I sent was yours." Your emails. Your transfers. Your receipts. He blinked, stunned. You ruined me. I shook my head. You ruined yourself. I just let the truth speak. His hand trembled as he tried calling someone. No one answered. He was already falling, and he knew it. Then his phone rang, loud and sharp. The caller ID showed her name. He answered in a panic. The whole restaurant fell silent as her voice screamed through the speaker. What did you do? Everything is everywhere. They're calling me. We're finished. People turned to stare. He tried to hush her, but she kept shouting. You said she wouldn't fight back. You said she was weak. He slammed the phone down, face red and shaking. I folded my hands neatly. The revenge arc had begun. You planned to take everything from me, I said softly. Now you get to watch everything fall from you instead. His fork dropped with a clatter. The waiter froze beside us, unsure what to do. My husband's eyes filled with fear. He finally understood the truth. I wasn't the weak one. I was the storm. Right as the mistress hung up, his phone rang again. This time it was a reporter. I heard his voice crack as he said, no comment, again and again. Another call came. Then another. People in the restaurant stared like they were watching a live show. His hand shook so much he almost dropped the phone. I sat still and calm. He hissed at me, you planned this. I nodded. Of course. His eyes filled with anger and fear. He tried to stand, but his legs wobbled. A woman at the next table whispered, Is that the lawyer from the news? He froze. I watched as his pride slipped off him like an old coat. His mask broke. He knew the story was spreading faster than he could stop it. I lifted my glass again. To honesty, I whispered. He couldn't speak. The world he controlled so tightly was slipping away in minutes. He leaned toward me, voice low and rough. You don't understand what you've done. I smiled, calm as ever. I understand perfectly. I slid a small card across the table. It listed the exact time the Bar Association had received the folder with his forged documents, fake transfers, and secret accounts. Every lie you wrote is now in their hands, I said softly. His face turned gray. His fork slipped from his fingers and hit the plate. The waiter stopped, unsure whether to move. My husband stared at the card like it was a death note. Joyce, this will ruin everything, he whispered. I nodded. Yes. That's the point. The bracelet recorder caught every word, every tremble in his voice. For years, he told me I needed him. Now he knew he needed saving, and I would never offer it. Not again. Not ever. I reached into my purse and pulled out a slim folder. I slid it toward him. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside were the papers proving I legally owned 40% of his firm. His eyes widened. No, you didn't even know about this, he said. I nodded. I do now. In the second page, bold and clear, was the order freezing all firm assets until further review, signed earlier that day. He read the page twice, then looked up at me as if I had taken the ground out from under him. You can't freeze my firm, he whispered. It's not your firm, I said. It's ours. And I'm finally claiming my share. He pressed his palms to his forehead. He had planned to leave me empty. Now he was the one who had nothing he could touch. I watched the truth break him, piece by piece. The waiter brought dessert, then a small plate with a chocolate shell. When I broke it open with my spoon, a small white card rested inside. I slid it toward him. The handwriting was simple and clean. Happy birthday. You just lost everything. He stared at it like it was a weapon. Around us, people pretended not to look, but everyone was listening. His chest rose and fell fast. He whispered, Why, Joyce? Why go this far? I leaned in just a little. Because you tried to erase me, I said. You tried to turn my birthday into my ending. But I don't end. I rebuild. He pushed his chair back and stood too fast, knocking the edge of the table. Gasps filled the room. He didn't look at me as he stumbled out the door. I watched him go, steady and silent. Justice tasted sweeter than the dessert. I stepped outside minutes later. The cool night air touched my skin. Down the street, flashes of cameras burst like fireworks. Paparazzi, tipped off anonymously, by me, surrounded him. He tried covering his face, but reporters pushed forward. Is it true? Did you steal from clients? Were you cheating for years? His voice cracked as he shouted, Leave me alone. The cameras only flashed faster.
People walking by stopped to watch.
He tried to push through the crowd, but someone shouted, "We saw the emails." I stood at the corner, half in shadow, watching the scene unfold. Someone snapped a photo of him screaming at a reporter. Another caught him falling to his knees. Those images would be online within minutes. His strong, proud image was gone forever. I turned away quietly and walked to my car. For the first time in weeks, I breathed easily. The next morning, the news was everywhere. His law license was under emergency review. Reporters repeated my files word for word. Videos of his breakdown outside the restaurant played on every channel. People online called it the fall of the year. His mistress posted an apology statement, saying she was sorry for trusting a liar. Her words were cold and careful, but the damage was done. The public saw me as the quiet woman who had suffered in silence. I didn't answer any interviews. I let the storm swirl around him. My lawyer called and said, "It's starting. His world is collapsing." I sat at my kitchen table and held my warm mug. For years, I woke up beside a man who hid knives behind smiles. Now the masks were gone. I didn't feel joy. I felt peace. I whispered, "This is the justice he wrote himself." Soon, the court began looking at the accounts he tried to hide. The offshore transfers, the fake dependency labels, the company money used for the mistress, all of it was dragged into the light. I filed for asset tracing, and because fraud was proven, the judge reversed all his hidden moves. The home he tried to take from me was mine again. He didn't even fight. He couldn't. He had no money left for lawyers. He moved into a small rental near the highway. My friends said they saw him carrying boxes alone, looking thin and tired. I didn't go near. I didn't even look at photos people sent. Instead, I walked through my house, and touched every wall. I felt like I had returned to myself after being gone for years. The court report came in the mail. His name was crossed out in red. Mine stood firm. A month after the dinner, I agreed to one interview.
Just one.
I sat in a bright studio, wearing a simple white blouse. The reporter asked, "Joyce, why did you fight back?" I folded my hands and answered, "Because he served me divorce papers on my birthday. So I served him justice for dessert." The line came out natural and calm, but the reporter's eyes lit up. Later, that clip played across every major channel. People shared it with cheers and claps. Women wrote to me saying they wished they had said those words to men who hurt them. I didn't brag. I didn't smile too big. I kept my voice soft.
Strong.
The interview ended with the reporter saying, "Your strength has inspired many." I nodded gently. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a woman who finally stood up. And the world listened. His firm collapsed quickly after that.
Partners pulled out. Clients left.
Investigators came for documents he tried to hide. Some employees sued him for unpaid bonuses. He tried to reach out to people for help, but no one wanted to stand beside a sinking ship. I heard he begged one partner to give him a second chance, but the man said, "You brought this on yourself." His name became a warning in our town. His awards were taken down from the courthouse wall. His license was suspended and later removed. He couldn't teach, advise, or practice anything close to law. I saw his picture in the newspaper, the headline reading, "Former lawyer faces permanent disbarment." I didn't cut it out. I didn't celebrate. I just folded the paper and placed it in a drawer. His ending was not my joy. My freedom was. With the assets I regained, I made a choice he would never expect. I donated part of the money to a legal aid group that helped women facing unfair divorces. The director hugged me and said, "You're giving people hope." I attended a charity gala wearing a deep blue dress. When I walked into the hall, people applauded. Not for revenge, for strength. For survival. For rebuilding. I greeted old friends with warm hands. Reporters asked for quotes, but I only said, "I'm thankful to stand here with a clear heart." I saw women whispering to each other, pointing gently, smiling at me. I felt my shoulders loosen. It was the first night in years that I felt truly present. I wasn't a wife hiding behind a man. I wasn't a victim climbing out of a hole. I was Joyce, whole, steady, and rising again. A week after the gala, I found a letter in my mailbox. His handwriting looked shaky. I held it for a moment before opening it. Inside, he wrote, "I didn't think you were capable of this." He said he was sorry. He said he didn't expect my strength. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He only wrote that he wished he could undo the disaster. I sat at my kitchen table and read it twice. Then I smiled a little. He had spent years thinking I was weak.
He built his whole plan on that idea.
He never understood that quiet did not mean small. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer with the others. No anger.
No sadness. Just truth.
He had finally seen me.
Not as his wife.
Not as his helper. But as the woman who stood up and changed everything. A month later, someone sent me a message saying the young lawyer had moved out of town. She wrote a public post online, thanking the wife who opened my eyes. She said she fell for his charm and didn't see the lies until they crashed on her. She wrote that she hoped to start fresh far away. I read the message and felt no hate toward her.
She had been used to.
Maybe she played her part, but she didn't deserve the ruin he brought into her life. I wished her well in my heart. There was no bitterness left in me. Revenge had done its work.
Now there was only space. Space for peace.
Space for new beginnings. I closed the post and looked around my quiet home. For the first time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was gentle. 1 year later, on my birthday, I returned to the same restaurant. I wore a soft cream dress and sat at the very table where everything had started. My friends gathered around with laughter and warm wishes. The waiter asked what we were celebrating. I said, Freedom Day, and everyone cheered. I ordered my favorite dish, the one he never liked. The candles on the dessert flickered gently as I made a simple wish, peace, nothing more. When I looked around the room, I felt light. I wasn't waiting for bad news. I wasn't waiting for someone to hurt me. I was simply living. The waiter brought me a small card at the end of the meal. It said, "You deserve joy." My eyes softened. Yes, I did. This birthday didn't hurt.
It healed.
A few weeks later, I was walking downtown when I saw him. His suit was wrinkled, and he seemed smaller somehow, like the world had pushed hard on his shoulders. He looked up and froze when he saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. His lips parted like he wanted to say something, but no words came. I simply nodded, polite but distant. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop. I walked past him with quiet steps. There was no anger in me. No fear. No hope for anything from him. He was a chapter behind me now, a page that no longer hurt when touched. When I reached the corner, I felt a soft breeze lift my hair.
I didn't look back.
The final step came on a bright morning. I sat in a tall office building and signed papers that transferred the property of his old firm's building into my new foundation, Phoenix Legal. The name made me smile. It meant rising from fire. Reporters gathered outside as I walked out with the keys in my hand. One asked, "Joyce, how does it feel to own the place he once ruled?" I answered simply, he thought I'd sign away my future. Turns out, I just signed his ending. Cameras clicked. My lawyer patted my arm. I felt steady, grounded, whole. The past was behind me, but the strength I found would stay forever. I stepped into the sunlight, ready for whatever came next. I wasn't broken. I was rebuilt. Please follow for more great stories. Thank you for watching.